Welcome to our Northwest Preview Show, where we are getting set to kick off the 2018 season. Shane, last year, Lena came home with the 19th state title in NUIC history, and this year we're chasing number 20. What other teams outside of Lena Winslow do you think can challenge for that top title this year?
Well, you're still going to have some tough competition coming out of the South. Something we've talked a little bit about isn't really well known yet, that GCMS might drop into 1A. They're your 2A title from last year. And out of the North, you'll have Dakota basically returning everybody. Forreston's going to be, we're still not quite sure where Forreston will be. They're going to be a little lower than what we've seen here lately. But, you know, that's the way it goes with these small schools. But the top teams always seem to reload, so to speak.
Well, another team that you didn't mention was Ottawa Marquette. Now, they came off of back-to-back semifinal runs just to lose in the first round last year to Fulton. But they're going to be back this year. They got Max Donahue back at running back. He's going to be healthy, so they're going to be a team to watch. And then you got Aurora Christian dropping down to 1A this year as well. That's going to be a team to look out for also.
Right. The big thing with Aurora Christian, though, is whether they're going to have enough wins to get there. If they have enough wins to get there, you know, that might be a similar scenario like EIC ran a few years ago where, oh crap, they fell into our class and they're just going to run the show.
Right, exactly. Another thing to watch out for, too, is last year's undefeated state champion, GCMS, very well could fall to 1A with an enrollment of only 312 this year.
Right. You know, I mean, nobody likes to see a higher class champion drop into 1A, but enrollments are enrollments, and you know, still, I say last year's 1A team, Lena Winslow still plays with GCMS. I mean, West Carroll gave GCMS what they could handle as well. You know, we saw what played out there. So don't get too worked up about, oh man, the 2A champ might fall into 1A this year.
Right, exactly. Now, projective-wise, the preseason cutoff is going to be 329 for Class 1A and 416 for Class 2A. So that leaves Du-Pec up in 3A if they are able to qualify for the playoffs this year as well. So there's a lot to look forward to in the season. We're going to start breaking down each team, but first we're going to do a coach interview with the head coach from Dakota, Joe Free. All right, we have Dakota head coach Joe Free here. Joe, it's a great pleasure to have you on set. You're the first head coach that we've ever had on set, as we're here at Wonderful Coaches on our first public show.
I appreciate you guys asking me to come out here. Not a problem.
Excellent. So, Joe, let's cut to the chase here. You haven't been very shy from the statement that your kids haven't played well against the upper echelon of the conference. How do you get your team past the mental block that exists? Or is it going to come down to them beating one of those teams in order to mentally move past that?
Yeah, I mean, eventually it's going to come down to, I mean, we're going to have to go one quarter at a time to win the quarter. I mean, at this rate. You know, we haven't done very well the last couple years against Lena or Forreston, and, you know, that's kind of the white whale we're chasing a little bit there. But, yeah, I mean, it's got to come down to almost like, can we win the first quarter of a game? Can we win the second quarter of a game? You know, we're going to get that shot week 3 with Forreston. You know, they got the coaching staff changeover going on there, but I mean, at the end of the day, they're still Forreston. They still got the athletes there. So, you know, they've earned their right to be ahead of us. So.
Right. And a lot of, you know, your success relies on certain players, you know, whether it was Valentine last year with Lena Winslow or Fox and Christensen at Forreston. We all know Engelbrecht's returning for you guys this year. Who is someone that we don't really know about but has to have a huge year for you guys to be successful?
I think it's got to be Josh Clark. You know, he's going to be a junior. He played last year as a sophomore, played some safety for us towards the end of the year. So he's got experience at least doing that. He did some special teams as a freshman. So, you know, the varsity game time is new to him. But he's also kind of moving to different roles at linebacker and filling some shoes there. And he's also got to probably take over at quarterback right now. I mean, he's been in competition with Caden Moyer, a sophomore for us, so, you know, he kind of performed a little bit better in the 7-on-7s. He just kind of took over a little bit in the leadership aspect that we've kind of been missing the last couple of years at quarterback. He's done so far in camp, so, you know, if he has a good couple weeks here, we got to have a big year out of him at quarterback.
Now, one of the things that you've really done this year, more so than I've seen in the past, but I know it's something you've been working on, is reinvigorating the Dakota way. How are you making that your own?
Well, I think it kind of went back to, when I got hired, I had all these ideas, but, it just wasn't ever the right time because there was a lot of stuff I had to clean up from 2 years prior to me that was a bigger mess than I think a lot of people even thought. I mean, I know everybody knows it's kind of a little bit of a train wreck, but, we had a lot of stuff to clean up, just business things, like understanding where all the inventory was and everything, and things like that. So, I think this year I went back home, went with my dad to the Byron IC game. We kind of started looking at what Byron did and what I'm used to and things that I truly believe in. And I think the senior class is kind of the right class to kind of break it out. So, we're just kind of making it more of a family program as opposed to just, a fall sport. So we want to, kind of be kind of like a cult-like mindset, kind of like a wrestling program. It's worked well for them. And why not pattern after one of the best areas? So.
Right. I mean, that's true, though. I mean, you got to get your own system in place, and you just keep building on that year to year, which will bring me to my next point. You're trying to get to the playoffs for the 5th straight time. Had a couple years where things got real lean for Dakota and didn't make it for 2 years, I believe it was. Do you feel you have the support to sustain and build on that success now that you've been there long enough to kind of get your own thing going, but also still build on what the school has done before?
Oh, yeah. I mean, kind of, the whole Dakota way is, bringing in different things that we've done in the past, and you go right down to our new logo. We've kind of unveiled a little bit on Facebook and Twitter. The kids wanted that spirit involved in there. They wanted an Indian head back, but they wanted to kind of pay tribute to the past with that spear. So that's kind of why we have the new Indian head overlaying the spear. So, it's kind of taking a little bit of the things that Coach Lano did well, and then bringing the things that I truly believe in have success. So,
which teams are you looking forward to playing in 2018 to necessarily see where the Dakota Indians will stack up this year?
Well, I'm chopping at the bit for Galena, and it's kind of a weird answer being 0-9 last year, but week 1. Kind of want to see what some of our juniors coming up can do, see what some of the seniors that play could do. Just kind of hitting somebody that's not maroon and white for the first time all season. But I think I'm not going to lie, the real one we got to circle first is obviously week 3 with Forreston coming home. So that's our first chance to kind of maybe get over that, build that mental block that we've had with these top teams. We got them at home. We feel pretty confident. They've lost a couple of their seniors and whatnot. We feel like we might have some of the better athletes on the field with Trey and Carter. So, that's really the one we're looking to see kind of where we stack up in the conference.
This is kind of a broad question. I mean, you can go with this however you want, all the way down to X's, O's if you want, or something as simple as, well, we need to win 5 games. But what needs to happen in order for you to be successful this year?
Well, I think, first off, our seniors got to beat the leaders. We can't have, average practices. We had too many times last year where we had some average practices. I think the Tuesday after the Forreston game, I kicked everybody out half hour in practice because it was going nowhere. They're feeling sorry for themselves. We can't have that kind of loser mentality where we feel bad for ourselves when something bad happens. I think that's been half our problem. Like Lena jumps on us quick, Forreston jumps on us quick the last couple of years. We start hanging our heads, and that's kind of begun to be the MO for us. Is, we're going to falter. Same with Princeville. They came out and punched us in the mouth in that 3rd quarter last year in the playoffs. All of a sudden, our kids start arguing with each other. So I think our seniors got to lead. If we don't have that, we're not going to go very far. We're not going to get in the playoffs. So that's got to be it. We just got to have it.
Coach, this is probably going to be an easy answer for you. It could be a tough answer. But who is your pick to win the Northwest in 2018?
Well, until anybody takes from Lena's got to be picked. When you're 14-0, you don't. And when we got beat 55-7, we got a problem. So I can't sit up here and be like, oh yeah, we're going to be the pick. No, we haven't earned that right to be the pick. I think we can challenge them a lot better than we did the last couple of years. But until anybody knocks Lena off, they've got to be the pick to click there in the Northwest.
No, I definitely agree with that. It's definitely an area, like you touched on, where Dakota, in order to get back to where they once were, you got to come out fired up, ready to play the Forrestons, the Lena Winslows, the EPCs, and you can't overlook a team like you struggled with last year in East Dubuque either.
Oh yeah, no, that was another kind of the hangover effect of Forreston. I think we had so many kids coming out of that Forreston game, and then they were out for East Dubuque, and we were hanging our heads because what was us that Forreston beat us, so we let East Dubuque kind of get a couple big plays on. Next thing you know, we're in a dogfight with them. So we've got to be ready to go every week. We barely escaped West Carroll. So, I mean, each week's kind of it's a battle. So.
Well, and that's one of the things. I mean, you look at the Northwest, ever since it went big side, small side, the Northwest divisions put out 8 state champions in the 12 seasons of the big side, small side as well.
Oh, yeah, no, there's no doubt. I really, I don't think anybody on the Northwest side, that might ruffle some feathers on the other side, but I don't really care. So, I mean, I'll take anybody in our crossovers. I'll take whoever in the playoffs, from the Northwest side, because I just think there's better football kind of going on there just because it's bigger schools.
Yeah.
Well, we saw that a couple years ago with Stockton, ran the table on the upstate side 9-0 and now losing the first round of Salt Fork. And you kind of anticipated that was going to happen.
Well, and even my first year, defense coordinator, Forreston, Stockton's 7-1 coming in and we're battling for a playoff license. We kind of just took it to them, right? We throttled them at home. So, nobody kind of expected that. So we knew watching the film was like, okay, that's a different brand of football than us playing like EPC that year. Forreston won state titles and Lena. So definitely a different brand of football.
All right, well, thanks a lot, Joe. We really appreciate you coming on, and best of luck to the Dakota Indians this year.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
The Galena Pirates last year went 0-8 in the NUIC Northwest, and they finished out the season with their first losing season in school history, going 0-9. It was actually their worst season in the playoff era as well. Shane, do you think that Galena can rebound in 2018, being a historically playoff powerhouse, or are we yet to see another subpar performance?
Well, it depends what your realistic expectations are. I mean, you go to Galena and they expect you to go 9-0 and win a state title every year. My expectations for Galena are somewhere in the middle of that. Should be a lot more competitive than they were last year. Somewhere along that brink of maybe the playoffs, maybe not, depending on how a few games go. But I will say this, that if a team runs into Galena and they think that it's going to go like it did last year, you might find yourself going home with a loss.
I agree. I mean, they don't bring back a lot of yardage. They only bring back 952 yards from last year. But one of the key cogs that I've noticed in the offseason is at the quarterback position, where they bring up junior QB Henry Anderson. And the thing with Henry Anderson is he really controls the huddle. It would actually very much impressed me how he demanded the huddle. He told his receivers where he was going. But also, they're commanding the respect of Coach Freed, something that we haven't seen since that 2015 blowout against Stockton in the first round of the playoffs.
Right, and that's something that anybody will tell you, that you got to have that leadership, but also the coach has to be able to be heard. I mean, if it's going on deaf ears, it's really not going to do you any good. And like you said, the last couple of years, Galena, whether the politics aside or whatever the situation might have been, the team was just going through the motions. So the results were going to be such.
Right, and I mean, going into this year, they definitely got the athletes to make things happen. Right. The only question mark that lies is, what is their offensive and defensive lines going to do? I mean, you look at teams like Forreston and Lena Winslow, the typical ones, EPC, West Carroll. They're very physical on the offensive and defensive side of the lines. Can Galena match up with that this year?
Well, I don't know if anybody's going to quite match up with what we've seen last year with Lena Winslow, and I mean, obviously, what they returned this year. It's going to be real tough for anybody to match up with them. But now, can Galena improve from last year? Absolutely. I don't think that their line play is going to be as soft as it was last year by any means.
Right, I agree. I mean, some of the top players that they got returning too, you got Kieran Duplessis, Connor Einsweiler, Hunter Baston, Henry Anderson that we already mentioned. You got Peyton Bauer. This is the third Bauer to go through the Galena program in the last 4 years. Mitchell Foley's back on the line, Chris Knauts, Andrew Tepley, Trey Hauer, and Austin Meyer as well.
Right.
So they got a good nucleus. I mean, you look at the size of their kids, their offensive, defensive line should be averaging around 210 to 220. So it gives them good size. It's just, can they get that 210, 220 pounds moving forward and quickly?
Right. And for me, the key for Galena is, I mean, in high school you don't ever want to get into the whole, let's set a foundation for next year, but that's exactly what Galena needs to do, because when we sit down here next year to talk about Galena, that might be a team that we'd say, okay, that could be our pick. This is going to be a younger team. that still might be a year away.
Right, and I mean, you're exactly correct, because, I mean, you look at some of these guys, some of them are a lot of juniors, and they're going to be playing some sophomores this year, so really, you look for an improvement out of Galena this year, but 2019 is where you're going to really see Galena kind of get back up to where we're used to seeing them.
Right.
But I think we both can agree that a good Galena team is better for the conference overall.
I agree. Yeah.
Because it just brings that competition level forward. Du-Pec Rivermen were 1-7 in the NUIC Northwest last year, finishing out with a 1-8 record, winning their first game as a co-op against Galena in Week 9. Do you think year 2 can build some success off of what they did last year?
Oh yeah, I fully anticipated a more competitive group. And, you know, we saw that with any other co-op. You know, it takes a while to get things going. You got to get the communities on one page, which no matter where you're from, you're always going to have that, well, we want this or we want that. But when a co-op fully mingles is when you have true success. And, you know, Du-Pec's on the right direction with that. You know, how many times over the years did we see EPC fought that and finally got to the brink and finally brought a state championship home? This Du-Pec team will be a lot better off than they were last year.
Well, and that's a good comparison, bringing up EPC, because you look at when EPC formed back in 1995, they were nothing. 1996, you saw a slight improvement, but by 97, they were in the playoffs, ready to go. And since then, they've been there 19 times. Now, with Du-Pec, you know, they got a good incoming freshman class. They proved that they could compete at the junior high level. Obviously, now we're getting to that realm where I really don't like to go, because you can be great all you want in junior high, but unless it escalates to the varsity level, it doesn't mean anything unless you're going to improve upon that success.
Right, and same, I mean, you can even take it as far as the fresh softball. We won first off conference. Well, that's nice. But your star sophomores are already playing varsity anyway, so you got to take that with a grain of salt. But I will say that Du-Pec's youth program is outstanding, and they have a good foundation in place, no doubt.
No, and I mean, last year we kept stating Du-Pec's on the rise, and they're coming. And I still feel that Du-Pec is coming. And it's not going to take long, but we're going to see Du-Pec in the playoffs before too long, and they're going to be a contender for the NUIC conference crown.
Right. Still might be a year or two away from that, but like you said, this is the year to go out and win 3, 4, flirt with that 5th game somewhere. Problem is, right now, that you're starting new, so to speak, and you're going to have to beat some teams that you're really not expected to beat yet, but that'll generally play itself out.
Well, that's just it. You pull off a couple upsets, you get the ball rolling in your court, anything's possible. I mean, we're talking about 16, 17-year-old kids. I mean, you never know what can happen and what's going to ignite. And I mean, you look at Du-Pec's roster coming into this year, they got good-sized kids, physical kids, too. I mean, you got Caden Manning back, Griffin Mulcahy's back at the fullback position. I mean, that kid is a monster. He's 250 pounds this year.
Right.
And then you got Hunter Foster, Eli Smith, Mason Manning, Aiden Larrabee, Ryan McLean, Logan Canuti, Cody Richardson. I mean, you just got a good base of kids to work with to get this ball rolling for Du-Pec in a positive direction.
Right, and an important thing is, you know, these kids are returning, so, you know, you're another year into the system, getting things where you want them to be. Maybe not exactly where you want them to be yet, but you got, like you said, you got to keep it going in the right direction. Anything's possible.
Right. So, I mean, I do expect to see Du-Pec come up a little bit.
Right.
I don't expect to see them being at that playoff caliber mark. There's just too many good teams still at the upper echelon that have more experience at this time. But this is definitely that year that you can start to see vast improvements in Du-Pec. And I guarantee you, if you overlook this team, they're going to get you.
Well, that's just what we got done talking about Galena. Might be a year away yet. Pretty much the same story here with Du-Pec.
Yeah, and the one game I'm really interested to see Du-Pec in is their Week 6 matchup with Madison. They get that game at home this year. I mean, I can see that being different than last year's 28-21 loss. And you saw what happened to Madison. They ended up making the playoffs, and they darn near knocked Carrollton out in the first round.
Right. So, you know, just keep it going in the right direction. You know, Hoffman's doing a tremendous job there. The community's buying in. The lower levels are outstanding. If you ever, you know, take in the youth program, you see all the technology that's going into it. Just great.
East Dubuque came in last year with the hopes of making the playoffs, but they quickly saw that vanish, finishing 2-6 in the NUIC Northwest and going 2-7 overall. Since moving to the Northwest Division, the Warriors have not made the playoffs. With some key positions returning, can this be the year the Warriors finally get back to the playoffs?
No. And the reason for that is they're not ready to compete with the higher teams. I'm sorry, that's just the truth of it. I don't see it happening.
You know, you look back at their 2016 year, and they started off 4-1.
Well, they didn't.
And failed to finish out to get that 5th win, finishing 4-5. We talked about that heavily, being the worst 4-1 team in the state. This year they returned 3,800 yards of offense. And they got a couple key returners that can actually help them get to that level. They look good in the offseason. But here again, the line is the question mark. They were really soft last year on both the offensive and defensive lines.
Right, and, you know, that's where you start with anything. But their quarterback is a versatile player, you know. They can air out if they have to. He ran for 645 yards last year. Honorable mention, all-conference quarterback. I mean, in the, you know, the toughest conference in the state. So you can run with that if you want to.
Right. I mean, Breitbach is going to be a third-year starter. So, I mean, they got that going for them. He did get hurt last year, and it was Lane Boyer who came in at quarterback against Dakota and started lighting them up. And what created that game to be a lot closer. But, I mean, you look at what Lane Boyer is, I mean, you could put him in the same boat with Parker McGee or some other players in the conference. I mean, he's got 696 yards. He's a big dude. He's got a lot of athleticism behind him. And, I mean, looking at him in the summer, I mean, he's definitely packed on more weight, more muscle. So you can tell he's been getting it done in the offseason. But they're just not a one-man show.
Right, and in order to compete at this level in this conference, you need more than just a one-man show. Yes, every team has the one man that they go to, but that's also because there's a lot of other things that are happening that, you know, the average person doesn't see. Lena Winslow had the line. Forreston had the speed last year. You see where I'm going with this. There's just too many question marks for East Dubuque. I don't see it happening this year.
Some of the players that they do return outside of Breitbach and Boyer are Zach Reeson. He only had 20 yards rushing, so that was in some pickup time. Hunter Sherman returns. He was an honorable mention all-conference tight end last year, had 400 yards receiving with 3 touchdowns. And then you got Ryan Turner and Levi Nelson and Ethan Mulgrew that return on both the offensive and defensive lines. But that's pretty much it when you look at what East Dubuque has returning. Like you, I just don't see where East Dubuque's going to turn that corner to be a playoff quality team this year. You would hope that with what they have building, they can get there, but they definitely need to find some physicality in order to compete in the Northwest Conference. The Amboy Clippers come in with it this year, going 3-6 each of the last 2 years since joining the Northwest Conference out of the Three Rivers Conference. Last year they were 3-5 in the Northwest, 3-6 overall. They've kind of had a tough run the last 2 seasons, losing both crossover games even in the Upstate Conference against Aquin and Milledgeville. They're going to see Milledgeville again this year in the first week. Once again, Amboy returns a lot of unproven talent as well. Do you think Coach Jones can push the right buttons to get Amboy back in the playoffs for the first time since their first round of the loss to EPC in 2014?
They should be competitive, that's for sure. You know, it's really been a tough welcome to the NUIC for Amboy. That was something that the conference was actually looking forward to. You know, you're gonna draw on that Three Rivers competition. You know, people put Three Rivers into 3A God country, whatever. Amboy was gonna come in, you know, light up the NUIC, and that just hasn't happened. You know, was it 2 years ago? Amboy looked like a damn college team out there, but the talent didn't match the size.
Right. No, exactly. I mean, you look at what they've done in the last 2 years. You can even go back to last year in the Three Rivers where they were 2-7 that year, and then coming in, going 3-6 each of the last 2 years. And like I already mentioned, losing crossover games to the Upstate Conference when we know. And I hate to say it, but the Northwest has been, for the last few years, much stronger than the upstate side of the conference.
Right.
I mean, at some point, Amboy's got to get back to their tradition, back to their history, and start getting wins in the win column in order to make themselves prevalent again.
Well, and that might be even harder than usual this year. I mean, you look at it, you returned 209 yards of offense. If you think about that for a minute, a good running back on a given week can have that at halftime.
Well, that was Rob at halftime last year.
So, I mean, you're literally returning no offense. Might be tough sledding for the Clippers.
Right. I mean, you look at some of the players that they return, and all 209 yards come from the running back, Jake Shaver, who comes back as a senior this year. You do have a good quarterback coming up, though, Hunter Zimmerly. He doesn't get a lot of mention last year because he played down, but he's coming up. They got some good line size again with Maverick Lindemeyer, Gabe Shaw, Avery Shaw, Frank Piscitello, Dorian Barlow, and then at tight end you got Hunter Rutherford coming up. You look at what they have the ingredients to build on, but you know, to get more than 3 wins in the northwest side of the conference, I just don't know if that's going to happen in 2018.
Right, I don't see it happening myself, but like you said, they do return a lot of kids. It's just at the positions where you aren't generating much on the stat sheet as far as offensive contribution. Who's going to step up for the Clippers to make them competitive? Well, that remains to be seen.
It does. I mean, that's a big question mark for the Clippers going into 2018. They're going to need that person to step up, and they need to get a proven leader in order to get things going in the right direction. Otherwise, you're, like I said, you're looking at another 3-6 season for the Clippers. All right, we finally get into the meat of things as we bring on the EPC Wildcats. Last year, EPC finished 4-4 in the NUIC Northwest, going 5-4. Well, 5-5 actually overall, 5-4 in the regular season. They lost in the first round to the state champs GCMS 50-14. And Shane, that is a game that I still feel EPC was much better than a 50-14 loss to GCMS.
Yeah, I mean, every team has games like that. EPC's happen to be in the playoffs. I mean, if my memory serves me right, wasn't there a couple special team scores in there? I think there was a punt return for a touchdown.
Well, they scored 7 of their first 13 plays.
Right. But moving forward, yeah, and watching GCMS play with West Carroll as close as they did, West Carroll and EPC weren't that terribly far apart. So that was a clunker of a game, and you know, here we are next year.
Now, as far as EPC goes, this senior class has been the most talked about class in EPC history in recent years. With the loss of Coach Randy Ashe, can they continue their winning ways with Jared McNutt taking over?
Well, the talent isn't going anywhere, that's for sure. It'll just be whether McNutt gets his system in place and the kids buy in, which I don't have any reason to believe they shouldn't. He did good things at Warren when he was there. I think EPC is in good hands.
Now, one of the other things, too, is like you said, I mean, they do return a lot of talent in the backfield and at quarterback. But the biggest concern for the Wildcats this year is in pass defense and on the offensive and defensive lines. Now, obviously, they still return Eli Dirks, and they return Addison Keltner. Who else is going to step up into those lineman roles that's going to be getting them to that next level?
Right. I mean, you got Wyatt Hammer that's going to be crucial for them. Bryson Sturvent. I mean, these are guys that are going to have to, you got returners, but who's going to take on, where Ashe left or whatever the case may need to be for EPC to keep the line play strong? Because, I mean, you got the horses in the backfield. You got the talent at the quarterback. It's just getting that line play up to where it needs to be that's going to be crucial for the Wildcats.
Right. I mean, you still got Drake Musser coming back too, along with Zach Lieb. Those are definitely guys that are going to have to step up in order to get EPC back into the win column in the playoffs. But also, they got to improve upon that 5-4 record last year. I mean, they came off of an 8-1 year the year before, which actually surprised everybody. And then they fall right back to 5-4 the year after. And they actually had to squeak out a win over, well, it wasn't really squeaking out a win over Polo. They pretty much dominated Polo. But they had to get that win in Week 9 in order to make the playoffs.
Right. And, this is an EPC team that, I don't have them picked to necessarily play with Lena Winslow, but, you're gonna look for them close with the Dakota, Forreston, going to have a three-way battle basically for who's going to be pushing that second place envelope.
Right. I mean, and the numbers has always been a recent thing with
Right.
EPC. I mean, just a couple of years ago, they were down to like 22, 24 kids. Now you're talking about getting that number back up. You know, can that uptick help them moving forward?
Well, absolutely. I mean, anytime you get a lot of kids in the program, your talent pool expands. And also, if you have enough kids at the lower level, you know, you're filling out those practices so the kids are working together. You know, how many times don't we see freshmen and stuff playing vital roles in whether it's scrimmages or scout teams or whatever?
Now, here's one of the interesting facts, too, on EPC. They actually returned the most offensive yards
Right.
out of every team in the Northwest with 5,173 yards in their career.
That's a chunk.
It's a lot. It's a lot. I mean, there's only one other team above them, actually, and they happen to be on the upstate, which we'll cover them next week in our upstate preview.
Right.
But as far as returners for EPC, we got the Keppel twins back, Jaden and Jared. Jaden last year ran for 1,448 yards, 15 touchdowns, and Jared added on another 1,113 yards and 12 touchdowns. Both of them were on the all-conference team. You got the Smargessi boys back as well. You got Braden at quarterback, threw for 1,079 yards last year, 10 touchdowns. And then you have Brock Smargessi back with at receiver, 144 yards is all he had, though, with 2 touchdowns. Lucas Peterson's back. He was kind of Braden's key target, 542 yards receiving. He was honorable mention all-conference end, 4 touchdowns there. And then you add in the likes of Colin Kaburski and even a little bit of Eli Dirtz. So then you got Eli Dirtz, who got 20 yards rushing last year, but I just don't see him being in that fullback role much this year. Although, honestly, if I were the head coach, that's where I'd be putting him because he's 195 pounds, and if you watch any of his workouts,
Right.
the kid's a brute, man.
Right. So, I mean, you've listed all these tools that EPC has. It's just going to be like what we literally just talked about, whether the line shows up to play or not.
Right. I mean, one of the good things I see out of EPC is I do see them finishing the season better than their 5-4 mark.
Right.
I see them improving more from what they had last year, but it comes down to how much are they going to gel with the new coaching staff with McDonough's place. The West Carroll Thunder last year finished 5-3 in the NUIC Northwest, going 7-4 overall, 6-3 in the regular season. They got that first round win over Fieldcrest in dominating fashion before they met their demise in the second round to GCMS as well, 24-6.
What a game, though. I mean, that was a close game for a long time. I mean, a lot of people looked at that on paper and thought GCMS, you know, coming in, they were undefeated. You know, they're going to roll the Thunder, and that wasn't the case at all. That was one of GCMS's hardest games they played all year.
Well, and there was people that commented on that game that if West Carroll could bring that type of play to every game, that they would be much better than what their record indicated.
I don't doubt it. I mean, we listened to that on the way back from Stockton and Akron, I believe that was. And it was like, we turned on the radio, it was like, holy cow, this game's...
It was 9-6
right,
going into the fourth quarter, and then a couple of mistakes, and GCMS just went, phew, gone. But they lost a lot of talent from last year's team. All right, 2018 is going to show us exactly what Coach Leighton has brought to the program and what he's going to be able to develop and rebuild. Do you think there is a good amount of underclassmen that can play big minutes in 2018?
Oh, yeah. I mean, they're going to be a hugely young team. I mean, you're talking returning 173 yards of offense, careers. I mean, that's nothing. You're going to have, it's going to be a young team. I mean, like any young team, what needs to happen in order to win? Like you said, this will prove a lot as to what the foundation is of West Carroll and what Leighton has built to this point.
Right. I mean, one of the things that they're going to really bring back, Derek Tracy, he was their sophomore QB last year. Nobody knows about him. In fact, he registered 5 yards rushing and some mop-up duty last year. He's going to take the reins at QB this year. And I tell you what, he can make things happen. He's got a good arm. He's got good size. He's tall, so he can see over the line. Not many people know about him yet, but they're going to this year.
Right. And, you know, there's going to be some others. I mean, you're looking at on our screen here, we're looking at 15 probably key returners. It's returners, but at what capacity? I mean, you're talking kids that are, one of the key returners had 3 yards, last year. So, I mean, what needs to happen between last year and this year? Your summer workouts and all that, whether 7-on-7s, you saw them on 7-on-7 and said they looked better than what you thought they would be at this point. So we'll see if that translates on Friday night.
They did. They looked much better than I had originally anticipated West Carroll being for 2018. However, in order for them to get there, they're going to have to rely on some linemen that didn't get a lot of playing time last year. I mean, you got a couple that are returning that did a good job. Alec Tipton, Dalton Coyer, and Cody Scheider, who was actually all honorable mention, all-conference center behind Forreston's center, but
Forreston's kid.
Yeah, it's gravy, but
right.
Anyway, you got Chance Williams back. Chance Williams was one of their wide receivers last year. Finished with 56 yards rushing, 45 yards receiving. So actually, he combines for a lot of their returning yards.
Right. I mean, right. You have that. But who else? I mean, you got a lot of line kids coming back.
I'll tell you one kid that I was looking at was Michael Popkin. He didn't get a lot last year. In fact, he only had 64 yards receiving with 1 touchdown last year, but he was only a sophomore. He's going to be a junior this year. He looked really good in the 7-on-7 that I saw him play in. And you got to remember, Lyson's had West Carroll going all over the state for 7-on-7s this year. I mean, you talk about a team that has traveled, they put in the most mileage out of any team this year in the offseason.
Right, and I mean, that's going to be one of those things we're going to have to see how it plays out. I mean, they're going to have a tough draw in their first week with Lena Winslow. That should tell us everything we're going to find out about West Carroll.
Right.
We'll know fairly fast.
No, I agree. So, I mean, another kid that I was really impressed by is Cody Sipe. He's going to be their fullback, linebacker. I mean, he was only a sophomore, going to be a junior. A lot of people don't know about him. But, I mean, that kid is thick, he's solid, and he's got good hands. If he can play at a physical level, he's going to provide problems for teams trying to stop him. And, of course, Lyson's going to keep running the spread at West Carroll.
Right.
But I think it's a good thing for what they have because against a team like Lena Winslow, you're not going to be able to put everybody in the box.
Right. I mean, you got to find ways to widen out and somehow get some yards. You're going to have to find ways to find out to gain more yards. Like you said, against Lena Winslow, you're not going to want to pack it in. So, I mean, the spread is working good for West Carroll. We'll see how it plays out this year. You lose all the platinum. I mean, you lose all that. That's a lot to make up.
Right, it is. I mean, so some other guys that they got Cody Schmidt on the line, Brad Tuffy's at center, Keelan Sisler, Carson Rice. Another kid that came up that looked pretty good as far as wide receiver DB was Colton Ballard. So, Lyson's got the people where he needs them. It's just, how are they going to bring that? And it's a question mark because we don't know. Right. Until they get out on the field week 1 against Lena Winslow down in Savannah, we have no idea what West Carroll's going to really be. Dakota went 6-2 in the NUIC Northwest last year, 7-3 overall, losing in the first round in double overtime to Princeville, 27-24. The Indians are looking for their 24th playoff appearance and 19th trip in the past 21 seasons. What do they need to do to get back to the top of the Northwest Division?
Well, like we were talking with Coach Free, they got to compete with the upper teams, Forreston and Lena Winslow at this point. We saw that last year. They went into Forreston 2-0. We're moving the ball, had a holding call, and the wheels just fell off. You got to change the mentality. The kids got to not let the snowball effect happen. Like, oh no, here we go again. Like Coach Free said, but until you play with them, I mean, the only way you're going to get past that is to play with them.
Well, I mean, it does hurt your feelings a little bit when you turn the ball over and all of a sudden, first play, A.J. Christensen's gone just like that.
Right.
So, you're right, and they did look timid. I mean, I still bring it up. I mean, I remember one punt return where somebody was backing up, and they got scared. They called a fair catch, and nobody was close to them 20 yards away.
Right. I mean, it's just little things like that you got to improve on. I mean, there was a lot of things that I'm sure we could talk about, like against Lena Winslow, the wheel route burned how many times, whatever.
3.
Right. And
Rob, Isaiah.
Right. So, I mean, Dakota has things to improve on. I think that they'll be much more improved. But it all starts on playing with the top teams.
And I mean, the Indians return a lot of talent.
Right.
It's just they got to get over that hump, like Coach Free said. They got to get over Lena, Winslow, and Forreston. And they got Forreston in week 3 in Dakota this week, and that's going to be a true testament of where Dakota stands for 2018.
Right. And even that might not be a true gauge because we don't really know what Forreston's going to be at this point either.
Right. No, you're absolutely right. So, I mean, one of the big things is Dakota returns 3,184 yards this year. Trey Engelbrecht is the guy that they are going to rely on heavily. He had 989 yards rushing last year, 14 touchdowns. Caught another 123 yards receiving with 2 touchdowns. He was an honorable mention all-conference running back. He was also all-conference utility honorable mention. But, I mean, really, to see Dakota be successful this year, Trey's going to have to be that guy that's in that 1,500 or 2,000 yard range.
Well, and that's what, I mean, we've talked about that all summer. Like, where do they need to get so that you get the personal numbers, but the personal numbers, if he's having that year, that's good for Dakota. You know, 1,500, you're starting to get up to that, okay, top of the conference team.
Right. No, you're absolutely right. I mean, you look at last year, Rob ran for, what was it, 2,400 yards, which was just insane. I mean, the last time we saw a running back go off like that was back in 2011 when Jake Apple did it for Dakota.
Right.
So, I mean, Trey's going to have to be that guy, and there's a lot of expectations for him, but he's a senior, and he's going to have to bring that game. But the only way he's going to be able to bring that game is if Dakota can get their offensive and defensive lines to make the holes. And that's a real big area of concern because last few years, Dakota is great at throwing their weight around against the subpar teams, but you get them up against them good teams, and they were scared.
Right. I mean, we kind of broke it down where it was. I mean, you had your 2 teams. I mean, Dakota would beat up on everybody, but then, you know, you're getting outscored. I don't remember what it was. You know, 90-something to 7 or whatever the numbers were.
95 to 7.
I mean, that's a huge gap to close.
Well, and, you know, Coach Free talked about that. We talked about that last year in this exact same situation where Dakota's got a gap to close. They know it. Can they close that gap? And then they go out and get wasted 95 to 7 against Forreston and Lena.
And that's something that, you know, they finally broke through with a game that was decided under a score. I mean, we talked about that last year. I don't remember the exact stat, but it was something like Dakota had only won 4 games, I believe.
That's it.
That was decided less than a score in the past, how many years? It's been 4 or 5, was it?
11, they had quite a few of them.
Right. But, I mean, you're looking at 7 years ago.
Right.
So they finally broke through with that game against West Carroll. You know, people were leaving the stadium, and, you know, they came back and won there.
Right, exactly. And I mean, that was a sad thing to see. But you go back to where Dakota's at. I mean, they got, outside of Engelbrecht, you got Aiden Cassidy back. You got Ben Holstein, Evan Riggle, Kate Closter. I mean, you got some good guys coming back.
Carter Drake.
So, you got, like you said, Carter Drake. You got Nolan Lentz back at kicker and punter, which is going to be a lethal option if they're inside the opponent's 30-yard line. You know, on the offensive line, you got Ryan Banger. You got Bryce Bixler. And then, you know, you got Luke Schwartz, Jeremy Swanson. Those guys are going to have to come up and play big in order to get the playing time, in order for Dakota to be successful.
Well, that's just it. Everybody's going to have to up their game a little bit. You're going to have to see who can do a little bit more for them. I mean, your top guys, Engelbrecht, he's got to do what he's got to do, but he can only do so much without their help. Now,
the key for Dakota is really going to rely on their new quarterback, which is going to be Josh Clark. And Coach Free named him as their player that has to click in order for Dakota to be successful in 2018. And I agree. I mean, we had pegged him as the potential starting quarterback before talking to Coach Free, seeing the options that Dakota has available for that. And, I mean, he doubles as a linebacker as well, so he's got some kind of tenacity, but he's going to have to come up big in big situations and play to that level for Dakota's offense to work.
Right. So much goes into the quarterback position. You got to control the huddle, and then you actually have to play the game.
Right. So, I mean, can we see Dakota be more successful than last year? Yes, I agree with that. Can they be at that echelon where Lena Winslow will be this year and Forreston was last year? That's still to be seen.
Right, and you know, you got Galena off the bat Coach Free touched on. But their true test really isn't going to be until we get to that week 3, and we'll have a better idea.
Right. I mean, they got to get to week 3. They got to beat Forreston. But week 9,
right,
Lena Winslow in Dakota. That's going to be the game that's going to really tell us where Dakota's at. The Forreston Cardinals were 7-1 last year in the NUIC Northwest, finishing with an 11-2 record, losing to Lena Winslow in the semifinals 12-8. That was definitely a game that we had anticipated from the start of the season. Right. Lena Winslow, Forreston. Now, obviously, me and you both picked Forreston last year in that game. However, it was Lena Winslow that came out on top. And honestly, you take a look at that game. We'll just recap it real quick. But in the second half, Forreston outgained Lena Winslow by over 100 yards. And the interesting thing is Tuscola did the exact same thing in the state championship game.
Right. I mean, that was a game where a few plays go a different way, but that they didn't. Lena Winslow took it home. That's the way the game's played. Right.
I mean, you gotta get the ball in play, and all they could do is get AJ free, and I don't even know how he got free. I mean, he got outside of an Ormiston tackle. Chrisman was on that play, spun out of it, went to the end zone, and it was 12-8. But that's where the final score ended up being. Now, over the past 4 seasons, the Cardinals have only lost 6 games. They've had 2 state titles, a semifinal appearance. But with a lot of those players gone, this is going to be a rebuild year for the Cardinals.
Right, and I'll take that term lightly. I'm not exactly sure what you'd call a rebuild for Forreston at this time. Yeah, they're going to be down, but how far down? They still return a good chunk of yardage on the offensive side of the ball.
You're right, they do. And they're going to have a lot of unproven talent as well. But on top of that, you lose head coach Denny Diddick, who decided to. The rumors were there before the start of the season. They ended up coming true. He went to Guilford. In steps Kyle Zick, longtime defensive coordinator for the Cardinals. So really, there's not a lot of change to the coaching staff that's going to take place.
Right. It should be business as usual. I mean, you're not bringing in a whole new system. I mean, the kids are accustomed to it. And one of Forreston's strong points is when you're running 10 guys the ball, I mean, you're not graduating everybody. You got Evan Kelsey coming back, Bodicher. I mean, these are guys that might not have had the chunks that Fox and Christensen had, but they're still role players.
Right. I mean, you look at what they have returned. They got 2,504 yards returning. Bodicher has 1,096 yards rushing total in his career, 10 touchdowns. He was a first-team all-conference linebacker. Playing that middle linebacker position, filling in for Noah Geip, who had departed the year before. Like you said, Kelsey, those two are going to be the key cogs to make Forreston go in 2018. But you got Ethan Mulder.
Right.
I mean, last year we talked about Bodicher, Fox, Christensen. This year it's going to be Bodicher, Kelsey, Mulder. The thing is Kelsey's got a lot of speed. That was proven.
Yeah.
He does not have a lot of size, and he sure doesn't have Christensen's strength.
Right. But if he gets free, forget about it. I mean, he's gone.
Yeah.
And, I mean, we saw that a few times. How did he get through that hole? The quickness, the speed, out in the open, he's gone. So, I mean, that was a big home run threat that they had.
It was. I mean, and then you look at another guy that's returning. You got Hunter Rogers returning. You got Kayleen Davids returning. And really, in my opinion, Kayleen Davids is going to have to be one of those guys. He's going to be a senior. He needs to step up.
Right.
He's just going to need to do the things to get into the game. He has the talent levels there, but he just doesn't bring it to the game. So Kayleen Davids really needs to just – he's going to have to be a key cog this year for him to go. You look at the line. The only one that returns that anybody's going to know is Mitchell Hines. I mean, he was honorable mention all conference last year. You got Zach Cedar-Holmes coming up. Kyler Heenefeld's coming up. They're good-sized kids, and they can provide a pack that can actually make Forreston better than people may think they are. I mean, like you said, Forreston's down. But how far down are they really?
Right. For my personal opinion, if you know, they're on the schedule, obviously. You're going to want to play them early in the year rather than towards the end of the year, in my personal opinion. This is a team that could be clicking time towards the playoffs.
Right. I mean, you add in a few other kids. You got Austin Mitchell, Hayden Singley, Gabe Owens, Derek DeVries. The names are there. I mean, DeVries. Everybody knows of a DeVries from Forreston over the past 40 years, you know.
Right.
It's just DeVries, Forreston. It's one of those things. They got the things. The only thing that I worry about is their quarterback. They got Bailey Culler back. He hasn't really proven himself to be a quarterback that can throw the ball. I mean, he came in last year. He did a little bit here and there as far as mop-up duty. But he hasn't been proven that he can throw the ball.
Right, and I think that's something that really went unappreciated the last couple of years with Dawes back there at quarterback. They're going to see exactly, I mean, a year or two late, they're going to actually see what he actually meant to the team. Wasn't flashy, but he was consistent. And he provided your offense, and he commanded the huddle the way that a leader does. I mean, that's going to be a big shoe to fill.
Well, I mean, it was Hunter Dawes that we talked about last year at this exact same time in the season. Exactly that. Commanding the huddle, doing the things that you expect out of a quarterback. Bailey Culler's got some big shoes to fill in order to get Forreston to keep playing at the level they have been over the last 4 years. Lena Winslow. 14-0 state champs last year beat Tuscola 21-20 in the state championship game, where they had held a 21-7 lead at halftime in a dominating fashion. Tuscola stormed back in that second half to create a game out of it. This year, Lena Winslow is going to be that team to beat in the Northwest once again.
Right. Lena Winslow is going to be last year's force, and you know, you're coming off that state championship. You're returning everybody. You're gearing up for another title. You just got to play the games to get to the playoffs. I mean, you can't get ahead of yourselves, but things look good.
Well, I mean, and you take a look at what they lost from last year's state championship team. Obviously, Ravion Valentine, Ty Crispin, Michael Jones, Jake Caracas, Kenny Brokey, all key ingredients to that championship success. But they still return that vaunted defensive line, with exception of Michael Jones, who graduated.
Right. I mean, Lena Winslow's in good shape. When you bring that many back, that good of players back, the holes to fill aren't going to be as big as what people think. I mean, yeah, replacing Valentine, you can't replace him. You just find someone that is going to fill in and get the best that they can, and you take what you get.
Well, and you take a look at what they have returned. I mean, 1,974 yards is not a lot, but this is nothing new to Rick Aaron in his career. I mean, how many times have we looked at Lena Winslow going into a season, count them out, and all of a sudden, not only are they in the playoffs, but they're making runs in the playoffs.
Well, look at that. It was the 2013 team that had those losses. I mean,
6-3 and win state.
People look at that team as a team that shouldn't have won state, but they did. I mean, you can still lose some games and end up where you want to be at the end of the year.
Well, and that's what Coach Aaron is great at doing, and we stated it last year. At the beginning of the year, you don't expect a lot out of Lena Winslow. They're known to have slow starts. Why, I have no idea. But they start slow, but come week 9 in the first round of playoffs, Lena Winslow is ready to go year in and year out.
Right. I mean, whether it's broke down coaching as far as how you look at it, like, let's start out slow. You know, you don't want to show everything you have. I mean, you kind of just want to go through the motion, so to speak, to get to a point where you're playing your best ball at the end of the year. I mean, that's what you want. You don't want to peak early.
And that's just it. I mean, this is not a question of how Lena Winslow is going to perform. It's more of a question of who is Coach Aaron going to fill in the new spots.
Right. I mean, you're looking at all these returners. You talk about Ormerson. I mean, you do have to replace Valentine. They're okay, though.
Yeah. I mean, you replace Valentine with a Valentine.
Right.
Or Bobby Brown. You got guys there. Like I said, Ormiston's back. 1,039 yards rushing. Kid was a stud last year as a sophomore.
Right.
going to be a junior this year. Not many people are talking about him, but I mean, honorable mention all-conference running back, first-team all-conference linebacker from his middle linebacker position.
Sophomore.
Played huge on defense in that state championship game. You got Keegan Geelan back, 317 yards. Bobby Brown, Isaiah Bruce. I mean, Isaiah Bruce is getting looked at by Iowa. Already got offered by Iowa back on June 25th after attending a camp there. They call him back the very next day. Hey, we're going to give you an offer. Only a junior. I mean, Iowa. We'll talk about the University of Iowa because Ian Keel is also being looked at by Iowa. So they got two kids on this team that are returning that Iowa is looking at. And you look at the state of Iowa in general, they are starting to recruit Illinois small schools heavily. They're already looking at GCMS. They're looking at Maroa Forsyth. They're looking at Decatur St. Teresa. They're looking at Lena Winslow. They're looking at Orion. They're all 1A, 2A schools.
Right. I mean, it was 2014, Jack Hockaday, from Maroa Forsyth, goes to Iowa. A lot of people overlook the small school kids because, your names aren't out there as much as a 7 or 8A out of Chicago. But if you look hard enough, the talent's there at the lower levels.
Exactly. Hockaday, you brought it up. 12th state championship game, played lights out against Stockton, won that game. 14 against EPC, they got destroyed. But if you actually look at the stats of that game, Maroa Forsyth still played with EPC in that game.
Right.
Iowa's doing great things, but it's just amazing. You got two kids that are getting D1 looks on one team. Reminds you of Forreston from last year.
Right. That's good company to be in. For me, with this Lena Winslow team, you go back. The conference has never had a team win back-to-back. Never. It was close in 2011 with Lena Winslow. They were one injury away from winning it again.
Well, that's just it. Quinn Haas does not go down against Dakota in Week 9. You can book it. Lena Winslow State Champions 2011.
Right. And ourselves, we picked Forreston to win last year to go back-to-back. It didn't happen. This year, we could easily make a case that, hey, maybe this is the first time that it actually happens.
It could be. Honestly, you got to go all the way back to 1977 and 78 to the Stockton Blackhawks of the John O'Boyle era to find the last time a team actually made it to back-to-back state final games.
Right. It's rare. It's hard to do. You have a target on your back every week. And, injuries do happen. Things happen. Teams might not gel the way they should. Filling the holes might not go the way they should. Because, you have your talent, but you still need some luck along the way to win a state championship.
Right, exactly. So, on top of Sean Ormiston, Keegan Geelan, Bobby Brown, Isaiah Bruce, and Ian Keel, you also got Parker McGee back. He was first-team all-conference defensive line. He's going to play huge for Lena Winslow this year, both again at tight end, defensive end. Ian Keel, first-team all-state, first-team all-conference, first-team everything. He's also being looked at by Western Illinois, Illinois State, UW-Whitewater, Augie. UW-Whitewater, Augie are not D3 schools to shake your head at. Hell, it was just a little while ago UW-Whitewater was playing national championship games every single year against Mount Union.
Right, exactly. If you're being looked at by these teams, you're the real deal.
Right, exactly. So then you look at what they have on the line. You got Ethan Gift, Jacob Cycle, Brady Stitch, Benny Dunleavy. Guys that can make things happen if everything comes together.
Right. And for me, that's all it is. It's going to be the talent's there. It's just how's it going to come together and at what point is it going to come together.
Exactly. Lena Winslow is set up for another big run. We stated it in the preview. You got Lena Winslow. You got GCMS. You got Athens, Tuscola, Aurora Christian, potentially Ottawa Marquette. They're there.
Right.
But if Chicago Leo, that's a team we have not mentioned yet. Chicago Leo is going to be 1A this year. If they get that 5 wins, they're going to be in the playoffs. And they can be a very tough route as well.
That's just it. You don't know how things are going to shake out until playoff time comes.
But as of right now, Lena Winslow is your defending state champs. They are the defending state champs until somebody knocks them off. The key for them is to go into this season and not think about last year. They got to think about what they're doing this year, because this year is what matters. You saw with Forreston last year; they kind of didn't come out very good against Lena Winslow in that Week 2 matchup, and Lena Winslow came out pumped up and took it to them.
Right. Because you go back a year even further in that playoff game when Forreston just manhandled Lena Winslow. So we go into last season, we think, how can this team make up that difference? Well, not only did they make the difference, they beat them twice.
Right. They beat them twice. They beat them, in fact, they're in big-time games.
So my point being is, you can lose to a team or beat them handily the year before, but that doesn't mean jack squat going forward.
No, exactly. But if they stay focused on the prize this year, it's theirs to lose.
Right.
All right, so for the 2018 NUIC Northwest predictions, I will go ahead and start Shane. At number 1, I have Lena Winslow going 9-0 on the year. Number 2, I have the Dakota Indians at 8-1. Number 3 come the EPC Wildcats finishing 7-2. Number 4, I have Forreston going 6-3. Number 5, I have the West Carroll Thunder coming in at 5-4. Number 6, the Galena Pirates coming up to 4-5. At number 7, I have the Du-Pec Rivermen coming in at 2-7. At number 8, I have Amboy finishing at 1-8. And to round out the NUIC Northwest is East Dubuque, matching Amboy with a 1-8 record.
Nice. Like you, I like Lena Winslow going 9-0. Winning that Week 9 matchup against Dakota, put Dakota at 8-1. My difference here is Forreston going 7-2 and EPC at 6-3. I don't think there's a wrong pick necessarily there. Galena 5-4, getting that extra victory. West Carroll at 4-5. After West Carroll, I have Amboy and Du-Pec going 2-7. Amboy winning that matchup, and to round up, the last team would be East Dubuque, also going 0-9.
Very good, Shane. So, as far as our panel votes go, collectively we have Lena Winslow at 9-0, Dakota at 8-1, EPC at 7-2, Forreston at 6-3, West Carroll coming out at 5-4, Galena still finishing at 4-5, Du-Pec finishing at 2-7, Amboy at 1-8, and East Dubuque going 0-9. All right, so that brings us to the end of our Northwest preview show. We'd like to thank Steve and Andrea McGee for hosting us here at Coaches. This is our first public show in NUICFF history. We look to have many more, so we really appreciate you guys doing this for us. As far as the players coming out, we really appreciate the teams that came out and represented here today as well. Thank you for doing that. We look forward to a big season. We should see a lot of parity in the NUIC Northwest this year. Obviously, we both stated already, Lena Winslow being that team to beat, they got the targets on their back.
Right. Should be an exciting year, and also thanks to Coach Gree also sitting in, letting us just pick his brain a little bit on what they're going to be doing. Yeah, 9-0. We'll see what happens after that for Lena Winslow.
Yeah, so it should be a great ride this year in the NUIC. Definitely, like I said, a lot more parity. Get out to the games this fall. Season kicks off on Monday with practices. They start Hell Week. Thank God it's finally here. We only got 3 weeks until kickoff on August 24th. Unless you're Orangeville, you're starting on August 25th. Next week, we'll bring you our upstate preview show. We'll have guest speakers there as well. But until then, as always, root for the NUIC.